Good afternoon, Westerville. I hope that your Monday's been going well, and I'm thankful for an opportunity to share some verses from James 5 that I've been meditating on over the past few days. I encourage you to share also what the Lord's been laying on your heart and what you've been meditating on in your personal time. In James 5, beginning of verse 7, he wrote, "Be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and the late rains. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Do not grumble against one another, brothers, so that you may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing at the door." As an example of suffering and patience, brothers, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. Behold, we consider those blessed who remain steadfast. You've heard of the steadfastness of Job. You've seen the purpose of the Lord, how the Lord is compassionate and merciful. It's such a wonderful truth here as we consider what James is telling us. That he starts off with an example of a farmer. He doesn't highlight the work of the farmer. He highlights the fact that the farmer has a lot of waiting to do. He wants the precious fruit from the earth. In order to get that, he's going to have to wait for the early, the late rains. He's going to have to wait for all of the seasons to work through. And we have to wait through some seasons as well. And here he encourages us that as the farmer is expecting precious fruit, he may or may not get it. But the fruit that we're looking for is at hand. It's a definite thing. And yet we are encouraged to wait in the same way as a farmer is to wait. Now, there may be difficult circumstances that come up. There may be suffering that's involved. And so James gives us a couple illustrations of that. One is of these prophets who were speaking in the name of the Lord. They had to be patient, and while they were being patient, they were suffering. And yet that patience in the suffering produces steadfastness, and James talked about that earlier in chapter 1. But here he highlights that at the end of this section by showing us an example that we might not have looked at for one in which God demonstrated his compassion and his mercy, and that is the book of Job. He says, look at Job, consider Job, right? Verse 11, we consider those blessed who remained steadfast, and you've heard of the steadfastness of Job, and you've seen the purpose of the Lord, how the Lord is compassionate and merciful. Now, we see the purpose of the Lord, but in Job's life, he didn't always see that, especially not his wife. And as they're going through these difficult circumstances, he continues to remain steadfast. He continues to remain patient in the midst of suffering, and God's compassion and mercy is demonstrated, although he didn't always see it. And again, his wife didn't always see it. And as we're living through life, we are encouraged that regardless of the suffering that we're going through, that we need to remain patient and steadfast, relying on the goodness of God, relying on his mercy, relying on his compassion, and being patient until that precious fruit does arrive. And we have the absolute certainty in our God that it will arrive. And so let's be patient today, and let's focus in on the mercy and the compassion of our God. Have a great day.